Welcome to another episode of Peanuts from the Plebs, August 8th, 2020.
Already, the 8th of August. Can't believe
Whew.
it.
I know by next week it'll be like, well, the summer's basically over. Although technically it's not over until September 15th. That's why I called this the Midsummer Edition, because technically this is midsummer right now.
Yeah.
So
Uh,
August 8th, so we can hit our second week of talking of the Democratic VP, right? Because wait a minute, we still don't know yet.
uh,
What's going on?
yeah, why is that? It seems like they're stringing us along, right? Because it's like he's going to announce any day now, and
Well,
then it never happens.
as soon as I mean, I think two things. I think there's a war between the Obama camp and the Clinton camp for I think Susan Rice versus Kamala, and it also serves the purpose of as soon as he declares the VP, he has to get on the road and start campaigning or something, right? And even his once a day or once every other day from the basements have been disastrous.
Well, and that's also why I think that they leaked, quote unquote, the Kamala Harris thing was really just to put out the feelers, to see what the reception would be. Because I feel that as of right now, Biden doesn't. The reason why he hasn't announced is because he clearly doesn't have a candidate who will add to the ticket for him, right? So you have Kamala, who supposedly she would bring in the black vote, right? But technically that's a safe vote for him, right? For Biden, he doesn't really need that. In the South is particularly where he did the best. That's where he came back up from the dead essentially during the campaign. When everybody else was in the race. And then you have Susan Rice, who, I mean, yes, Susan Rice has the Obama credibility, but the problem with that is that, she's Benghazi. That's what you're going to get is Benghazi constantly. You're going to have all the right wingers and all that just constantly going at that.
And she also was one of the people that pushed back about doing anything in Rwanda. She was also, I mean, she has a lot of experience, all of it bad.
Right.
And
right. I mean, she's a neoliberal dream there.
and she would suppress progressive voters and drive Republicans to the polls. Like you say, their rallying cry would be Benghazi, and they would be excited to vote with her as VP.
So it's almost like they're trying to lose. I mean, if you were infiltrating the party and trying to get them to lose or whatever, or you were working for them, because maybe it's better for fundraising if they lose.
I think so.
If they were trying to lose, then you would pick Susan Rice because that'll drive away Republican voters. Obviously, if you wanted to win, you'd pick some kind of even a milquetoast pseudo progressive, somebody to get people on the left side of the party, and they're not even giving lip service to that. But
the problem is, what's your option? Who do you really have? Warren, I guess she would be the only one. And Warren, I mean, I honestly feel kind of bad for her because, and Jamal Thomas, he actually talks about this, how she put in the most work to get Biden the nomination. And she is the one who's been pushed off to the side as if she has absolutely no chance. And it's all because of identity politics, like obviously you would have the pussy hat wearing, faction that would be satisfied with having a woman, in that position. And again, the fact that it's so important. Never has it been so important, the BP pick for a nomination, because of, and the fact that it's known, that it is so important that this VP pick is the right person, because essentially they could be the next president of the United States, de facto, essentially. I mean, that's crazy.
Well, every time I get one of those surveys, those quote unquote surveys on my email, because I'm on that list, from the Democratic Governors Association or the Democratic, the DCCC or whatever, who's your first choice? Who do you like better for vice president? Susan Rice or Kamala Harris or other, and I've gotten tired of responding, but for a while I would do other. And then I write in Tulsi Gabbard, because Tulsi Gabbard would actually appeal to libertarians, to some conservatives and progressives as well, because of her her platform during her campaign. But I mean, she's obviously not even though she's a woman of color, she
Yeah.
fits the criteria. She's not in the running.
So first of all, I believe it's a legitimate question whether or not they want to win. I think living is easy when all you got to do is complain about Trump and fundraise off it. I think that's awful easy for them, and they still get, the corporations are still protected and everything like that, and there's no danger of us getting Medicare for all, anything like that. So all the
Isn't that
corporations,
sad though? I mean,
yeah,
it's just
right,
sad because like here you have an opportunity to run a progressive, to win, to
right,
actually win Congress, win the White House, and actually enact progressive legislation. I mean, the
yeah,
signs are all there. You have these congressional races. You have Jamal Bowman, Cory Bush winning these primaries. Like people want change. They're voting on policy, not on just the person. Because like I mean, like look at Lacey Clay in St. Louis.
yeah.
I mean,
So maybe the Bernie delegates, fighting for Medicare for all will actually do something, but that something would be maybe it actually goes in the platform, the Democratic platform, but that means nothing, right? We
uh,
know, it doesn't. We know it doesn't mean it's got anything that's going to get done, right?
Right, right.
they
Yeah,
don't they don't care. I mean, it's not about winning. It's just about or it's about winning for what they want, which is keeping a corporate machine going.
yeah,
Um, and it's not about enacting progressive policy at all.
exactly. Yeah, and they can, most of what they want to do still happens with Trump in office. They just get to fundraise in a more easier way. I'm not sure to what extent, they're um, the military industrial complex is a concern, though, whether or not they're suffering from those donors who aren't getting their way. The little that they're getting, keeping our troops in Afghanistan. I don't know if that's the equivalent of the when they're used to having, a new war every couple of years. I don't know how that's going to work for them.
Yeah, I definitely think that this is all a charade, essentially. Who was it that said it? Was it Eugene Debs that said that if voting really mattered or made a difference, then they wouldn't allow us to do it?
Yeah, yeah,
Essentially, I mean, I hate to be so,
yeah,
such a cynic about it, but it's the reality of the situation, and I feel that, you know, um, this is kind of like a little segue to another thing that I wanted to talk about that I think, and I keep harping on this, that I, I can't believe that we have allowed for these two to be our choices, right? Like
right,
this, and especially in these unprecedented times when we need leadership so badly. We need a visionary, we need someone who's gonna bring the country together, all of these things, right? And I'm really tired of like the Noam Chomskys of the world, right? So you guys saw how they put out this video, all these celebrities or these left wingers or whatever. They put out this video, essentially talking about why you should vote for Biden.
Angela
And
Davis.
and according to Chomsky, your feelings about Biden don't matter. It's just about getting Trump out, right?
wow,
And it's a matter of how many times do we have to hear this same argument. For decades now we have been hearing about the lesser of two evils. I mean, Obama was obviously very different, but because people, I would imagine people that voted for him, it's actually because they wanted to bring about change and all that does. But for everybody else, and obviously we saw in 2016 how that worked out, the lesser of two evils argument, right? And
mhm,
then it's always this argument of like I think Chomsky even said it, that activism isn't about just pressing a button. It's about like, I don't know, making the right choice. I don't know what the hell he was talking about, but essentially it's another way of voter shaming, right? So like, if now is the time to go third party. If now isn't the time, I don't know when is the time. That's
mhm,
the problem. We keep being told like, wait until next time, wait until next time, wait until next time. Well, guess what? This is next time. And it's like, because of the fact that we have allowed this to go on for so long, look at the choices that we have. Like, this is, to me, this is disrespectful. This is that they have zero respect for the voter to put this as the two options that you have, two
Right.
viable options, and then sell it to you as though if you don't vote for these two, or if you don't vote for one of these two, then you're the problem because you're a child.
Yeah. So as Nick Brana and Jerry from the Movement for the People's Party say, this is the last time. I mean, they're basically having at their convention. They're actually having one. They're having Cornell West and Nina Turner. I mean,
Oh, wow.
that's pretty exciting.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. And I would actually say that progressives were in the perfect spot as of a couple of months ago. We had Bernie was going to debate a declining and obviously declining Biden at the point that the COVID was proving the need for progressive policies and for Medicare for all. And the world dropped out from under me when Bernie starts patting Biden on the back. He couldn't get an argument out. I don't know what the hell happened there, right? Some deal was made going into that because we were in, progressives were in the perfect situation at that point. What happened from there is, I mean, that was all fixed and rigged behind the scenes. But I would say I'm feeling pretty positive, not this time around, but coming up with the Movement for People's Party. I don't know. They're giving me some hope now. I watched the last national call they had, and I'm getting some hope from them. So I'm pretty excited about that.
So, Jim, how do you? I mean, obviously, the presidential election, is
Right.
you have these two undesirable candidates, but what about down ticket where you have like actual progressives challenging congressional seats in the primaries, for
Hold
instance?
on, because I want to stay on this for a minute, because I feel like we always like skirt around this, but we never actually talk about this, right? And like the other thing that that Cristobal was talking about in that segment where they were talking about the Chomsky thing was
Yeah.
that that young voters are not going to vote for Trump, and I feel like this is such a huge mistake that keeps being made of making these groups a monolith. It's like all
Yes.
Black people are going to vote this way, and all young people are going to vote this way. And after 2016, did we not learn that just doesn't work that way? And
That's
after
right.
everything that's been going on, are we not seeing that it just doesn't work? And for young people, I
Yeah.
mean, I don't want to generalize, and I don't want to say that they're a monolith, but for a lot of young people, climate change is a massive issue, right? It's the issue. It's the
Sure.
only issue. Okay. And we don't have time to wait until next time, or to, you know what I'm saying? To be presented with these two as our options, which is why I feel like it's like, so it's maddening that this is what we're left with.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. Have any of the potential VP picks they're talking about even given a nod of the head to climate change in any real, in any way that you believe them?
At the most is that at least Biden believes the science, right? That's the
Oh, he
selling
actually,
point right
yeah.
there.
I think he actually maybe has said that, right? Yeah.
The change is never going to come from the top. I mean, they can kind
Yeah.
of go along with it, but the change, it's going to have to be individual choices. People have to change their lifestyle. You can't just have the president declare, we're going to tackle climate change. It's going to take a lot more than that. I don't know. I think
No,
if people,
but the presidency sets the mood, right? He sets the message, the tone for what his administration or her administration would
Right.
want to bring forth, right? And so it's, at least if I'm not for just having the language. Obviously, that doesn't matter to me. That's like with Biden, I think it's futile because it's like he doesn't really believe in any of these things. And if anything, what he'll do is that he will maybe go with the Green Deal because it's a great deal for neoliberals. It's a great deal for
maybe,
corporations.
they'll
Yeah.
rejoin the Paris Climate Accords, and that everyone can sit
Right.
back and say, "Oh, and now we're moving in the right direction, so I can just sit back and like not worry about it." So it's almost like people are going to become complacent if they feel like they're kind of moving in the right direction. So
Yeah.
I really don't know how helpful it's It
I
is.
think that point of whether that climate change comes from the top or the bottom is interesting. In that, if you had someone that was inspirational, like Obama, like if there was a real Obama, not the fake Obama that we got, if there was a real Obama that was centered around hope for climate change, he could be leading from the top, and he could also be getting people to work from from the bottom up. He would be he could have been inspirational enough to have everybody working for the same
Yeah,
thing.
but it's more like Congress is going. If you get a lot of progressive people in Congress, they're going to push the president in that direction rather than the other way around. I mean, it go both ways, but I mean, I think this idea that you get a president, they're going to push stuff through, like Trump, just issuing executive orders. You know, we still live in a quote unquote democracy, and you can't just rule by diktat. You have to actually have Congress go along. I mean, that's the whole thing. The problem is Congress. I mean, they're voting for these defense budgets and everything.
But what Nick Brana would say, what he said on the call Thursday, is that but we know we need they don't say third party, they say new party, because they don't want to legitimize the duopoly. So they don't use the term third party. Anyway, I've said that before. But he would say that the problem is that people like an AOC goes in and they're progressive, and I believe that she was originally progressive, and they get into the grind, and suddenly Nancy Pelosi is their friend, and they're not, their home base and the people they lived next to from their home constituency isn't first in their mind anymore.
Right, but I would
That's the
say I
problem
wouldn't
right now.
argue that you should just like give up on challengers like that. I mean, AOC is a disappointment, but let's see how Bowman's going to look. Let's see how Cori Bush is
Cori
going to
Bush
look.
looks, yeah.
I mean, because you get enough critical mass in Congress of these these progressives, then maybe it's going to start having an effect. And I'm
But
saying, like, I'd rather
yeah,
vote for, if I were in that district in St. Louis, I'd vote for Cori Bush, even
yeah.
though I could vote for the Green Party candidate for Congress, because I'd rather see Cori Bush get in there and actually try to, enact some legislation.
But
Now,
but that
I
but that is
totally,
specifically what Moving for People's Party is saying. Has been proven by now does not work. The
Okay.
idea that we're going to get enough progressives in there and suddenly something's going to happen. I'm
Okay.
sorry. Go ahead.
I
no,
disagree
no,
with
it's
that,
okay.
but okay.
So,
And I don't know.
it does tie in. Obviously, you know how I feel about Congress, and you know how I feel that is really at the crux of everything, right? But like, think about how things get done, right, according to who is the president, right? So, or don't get done, essentially. So how for the Senate they were able to pass the tax cuts, right, for the rich or whatever. They're able to pass their legislation that they want to pass because they have that person in the White House. So now, if we have all of these really great progressives that come up from from the grassroots and all this, they come in, but their message or their leader isn't conveying the same message that they're conveying. You know what I'm saying? Like, for instance, how for a lot of these people, Medicare for all is a big thing. But again, Biden has said that if Medicare for all happens to pass by his desk, that he would veto it. So, so you see what I'm saying? That's
Yeah.
why, in that sense, it does matter who's on top.
Oh, I
That's
agree.
not the whole
Yeah.
gambit. It's
I'm
not
not
the whole
saying
gambit.
it's not important. I think there should be a third party, definitely an alternative. But I'm just saying that there are still
Or
progressive
a new
Democrats,
party.
and AOC is not the end all be all of progressive challengers, and she's not really progressive. I mean, she did not endorse Cori Bush, right? She, Jamal Bowman did, but
That's right.
basically,
She didn't.
she was afraid to, and even Bernie Sanders endorsed Cori Bush.
Yeah.
But I think if you have enough of these people, there's still, you can count them on almost one hand or two hands how many of these real, I mean, real progressive Democrats are in Congress. There aren't enough of them.
Right.
But if you had, I mean, the fact that Cori Bush won against Lacey Clay, that's big. That's big. And I'm looking at what's his name in challenging Lynch in Massachusetts. You have Goldstein, challenging, who's, much more progressive. And Lynch is considered, a progressive, he's like left, but he's not. He didn't vote for
If I
for
if I see one more Markey or Kennedy ad, I'm gonna
Oh my
scream.
God.
I'm gonna
yeah.
scream. Or Becky Grossman. You guys getting all those Becky Grossman ads?
No,
No.
because we're not.
She's a mom.
Only Kennedy and Markey. That's
If
all
we
I
have
get.
more moms in Congress, we'll get stuff done. Oh my,
Gotta
stop
check that
it.
box.
Stop it. Yeah, stop it.
Well, I mean, I'm going to vote for a third party for president, definitely, and I'll vote down ticket. I'll probably vote mostly if there's a progressive challenger, whether they're Democrat or third party, I'll vote for them because, I mean, I always feel like vote for the candidate you feel aligns most closely with what you believe.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And I'm into a vote. I'm in a vote
Not
non-incumbent.
according to Chomsky.
Yeah. I'm in a vote non-incumbent mood. Yeah, I know Chomsky. Right. Right. You gotta go with Biden. Right. I know.
Chomsky's always been portrayed as like the ultimate leftist, and it's like he's not that far left.
No.
I mean,
I know you have your contentions with Chomsky, right?
yeah, I mean, he's just like he will. Well, I'm more of a conspiratorialist than Chomsky is. He'll never entertain any of these conspiracy theories, of like JFK and 9/11 and stuff. And I think they should be at least investigated, and I think he
I,
he, he is more mainstream than people think he is. I
I
mean,
wonder though. I wonder if you get him in a good pub with an excellent stout. If he doesn't
I
start
don't
letting
think
you
he
know.
drinks, but yeah.
That's Jim's answer to everything. Give him a stout.
Then I don't know. I wonder. You've got your public image and you got your private image, right? Who knows?
Well, I know someone had almost convinced him of JFK that there was something more than Oswald involved with the JFK assassination. He said that's
Yeah.
really interesting, and he looked into it, but then he said, "Nah, I think the Warren
Interesting.
report was right."
Well, you got to look at who he gets his information from, right? Which is quite ironic because he's the one who, talked about manufacturing consent, coming from like the corporate mainstream media. But yet, a lot of the information that he does get is from the New York Times, the Washington Post, all of these,
Right.
which are propaganda rags for the government. So,
I mean, for a guy who's like in his mid 90s, like he's doing okay, but
yeah, he's been looking kind of rough lately. Like he's looking like he's living in the middle of nowhere, like.
Well, you can't get a haircut because of COVID, I guess. I don't know.
What? But the beard, he can't shave his beard. Like he's got
Yeah, right.
a nice thick beard going on here. Yeah. Anyways. You know what else I wanted to talk to you guys about? So, like sticking with electoral politics, right? So now the whole big thing is obviously Trump saying that we should delay the election, right? And how, because of the whole mail-in ballot and how that can, lead to a lot of fraud and all of this stuff, right? But what we also have seen, well, first of all, if the virus is as bad as people are saying it is, as we are being told, then we really should not be having in-person elections, right? Like we can all agree that if that is what the narrative is, then it's not safe to do that, right? Because there's no way that we would be able to keep people 6 feet apart and masked, right. And all the senior citizens, that they are the ones who usually at the polling stations, all this kind of stuff, whatever.
Which is a hard argument to make because of the Dems pushing in-person voting for the primary.
Right. But it can be argued that, back then we didn't really know as much, and now we know that definitely. I mean, I agree.
I agree. Well, my opinion is it was wrong then, and it
for sure.
Yeah.
And then you have the whole mail-in voter thing, which it has problems in itself, and mostly the fact that it would take so long to get the results. And we're already at the point where no one's going to believe the results. It doesn't matter what happens. No one's going to believe anything. And then on top of that, you add the fact that you don't get the results that same night. I feel like that's just
that would drive me insane. But also, you heard about the situation in New York where they did a mail-in ballot election, and 20% of the ballots were thrown out for technicalities. Right. Many of them not technicalities that were the fault of the voter. It was handling of the ballot. That's not acceptable.
Right.
And that's
And
in
you
New
also have
York.
that mail-in starts, I think
Yeah,
in some states it starts before even the first debate.
right. Yeah, I heard it. It was coming right up. Yeah.
Well, I mailed in my ballot application for Massachusetts. I have not
Oh,
received
did you?
my
Okay.
ballot yet. I did finally receive
Oh,
the application, so I assume they're just kind of holding them, and will
yeah,
mail them out a couple weeks before the primary on September
Yeah.
1st. But
yeah.
keep my fingers crossed.
So a friend of mine actually will work the polls, and he says that you'll have like a fairly, especially the older population, you'll have a fairly heavy amount of people that um, mark the ballot wrong and you need to void that ballot and give them another one anyway. That's not possible with a mail-in
Right.
ballot. So right off the bat, you're talking maybe, I don't know, maybe only 5% or something, but that's still significant when we're trying to get everyone to vote, right? We're trying to get
Right.
everybody able to vote.
I think though it will help the Democrats, or it'll help the left in general, because people who have to work or whatever reason. I mean, traditionally it's always like the older people who vote no matter what, right? And so people who are, if you have
Yeah,
kids and don't have daycare that day or whatever happens, you can't make it out to the polling place. At least with a mail-in ballot, it's going to be easier. So I think that's obviously why the Republicans are fighting against it. And Trump, appointed a new postmaster general, political hack who worked in his campaign, who
yeah,
just announced that there will be no overtime for postal workers, and this will obviously have a detrimental effect on, when you have millions of mail-in ballots, right, that have to get in on time. It's going to be an issue. So I mean,
yeah.
there's
I
a
don't,
lot of politics around it.
some days you just feel like we are the banana republic of the world, right?
Yeah.
I mean, just like it's horrific, all this all this stuff going on.
Uh,
Well,
speaking. Okay, go
no,
ahead,
no,
Casey.
go ahead.
Um, well, in that theme of Banana Republic, I wanted to talk about Elliot Abrams a little bit.
Okay.
And I don't know if everyone knows who, you guys probably do, but I don't know if our audience of the other, two people who watch this podcast know who Elliot Abrams is. But he was just appointed the U.S. Special Representative for Iran. And that's not, to Iran, it's for Iran. So it's basically the guy who's supposed to be taking care of Iran,
Keep an
right?
eye.
Taken care of, in quotes. And his previous position was the U.S. Special Representative for, guess which country? Venezuela.
Oh, I was wondering. Okay, yeah,
And, by the way, didn't they try to do a coup in Venezuela
yes, sure they
recently?
did.
Well, Elliot Abrams is our coup expert. And
Yeah.
so I guess I don't know what he has in mind for Iran, but
But wasn't he also the ambassador or something for Venezuela when this whole thing went down?
no, he was a special representative for Venezuela.
Oh, special representative, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Now he obviously is a got its start in the Reagan administration. And by the way, I think it's interesting that Trump, who ran on a platform of disengaging from foreign entanglements, and recently has been talking about withdrawing troops from Germany and Afghanistan, would appoint the ultimate neoconservative into his cabinet. So that's just like, to me, like, okay, I think Trump doesn't really know. He doesn't know the history. He doesn't
Right.
really know what he's doing, which makes him tolerable, I think, to the neocon establishment, because they can get their people in there. If it's not John Bolton, it's going to be
Right.
Elliot Abrams, right?
Or
But
Pompeo's bad enough himself, you know.
Pompeo's bad enough himself.
Yeah.
But Elliot Abrams, I mean, he's famous for the Iran-Contra affair, and what happened back then. This was in the 80s under Reagan. Is that the Reagan administration was supporting these right-wing governments or right-wing forces fighting against left-wing governments in Central America. So in El Salvador, Guatemala, and Nicaragua. And I think it was the mid 80s, the Congress passes Boland Amendment, or early 80s, passes Boland Amendment, which said we can't provide aid to the Contras who were fighting against the Nicaraguan Sandinista government. Um, we and then they amended uh, the the law to say, well, you could give aid, but it couldn't be used for weapons. So what they did the Reagan administration is under Elliott Abrams is they went around, and Oliver North, they went around Congress, and basically they got money. They set up secret bank accounts, and they got the Sultan of Brunei to donate money, and they sent money to these Contras fighting the Sandinistas in Central America, and they just, I mean, they committed massacres. They were just horrible,
Mm-hmm.
horrible track record. And Elliott Abrams lied about this, and he was actually convicted. He was charged with several felonies for withholding information from Congress. Ended up getting just a couple of misdemeanor convictions. And guess what he had to pay a personal fine, though. Guess how much it was?
$1,500.
$50.
$50.
So like, you get more if you double, if you park in the wrong spot.
$50 in today's money, or
well, I just say, like, I remember you probably get a parking ticket in Cambridge would probably be about the same amount. But yeah, he got.
If I don't pick up the poop that my dog does outside, it's actually a higher fine than that. So
that's right.
But anyways, he was pardoned by George H.W. Bush when George H.W. Bush took office. So,
one big club,
big club, right? So now he's back, and he's and I just want to read a quote. I'm going to put a quote up here. Okay, in 2019, he said that the fabulous achievement was that El Salvador has been a democracy, and in a 1998 interview, he said, while it's important for us to promote the cause of human rights in Central America, it was more important to prevent a communist takeover in El Salvador. So basically, the end justifies the means. So I think the real threat that these people see is not so much the threat to human rights or democracy. It's the threat of socialism and taking their wealth away from this powerful elite. I mean, that pretty much lays it bare right there.
Yeah.
And this is the guy that Trump just appointed the special representative for Iran. And I don't think he's really interested in negotiating with Iran or bringing democracy to Iran. I think it's all about, bringing the Shah back or getting some kind of, U.S. friendly, corporate friendly government in Iran. But I mean, it just boggles my mind that Trump, on the one hand, he wants to kind of withdraw from this intervention around the world, and on the other hand, he appoints these people who are like the ultimate neocons.
It's funny too, because it seems like I would think he would so easily win if he out-lefted the left, right? If he did it on war, and also, I mean, he's been doing okay in other things. Like he signed the executive order for drug importation from Canada, and I thought he was just considering like permanently suspending interest on student loans. He just came up with something. So it feels to be like, but who knows what the power moves are going on as far as the military industrial complex. Maybe he just gets pushed around.
I think he gets pushed around,
right? He doesn't have a choice.
He is starting to push. He's starting to realize that if he pushes the populist buttons again, maybe he can get reelected, because apparently now Biden has dropped to a 3% lead nationally, and Trump is saying, "Well, I'll find a way to write another round of checks." Even though, I mean, he's not a dictator. He can't just like write checks, but he's basically saying, if I can do it within my power, I'm going to send out another round of stimulus checks.
And Trump is a known entity. People don't know about Biden. Like I guess maybe my brother mostly gets his, hope he's not watching. He probably won't be. Nobody else is. Maybe he mostly gets his news from CNN, and he knew about the recent Biden gaffe regarding Latinos are a very diverse community, African Americans not so much. But he didn't know about the one calling the black interviewer a junkie. He hadn't seen that one. So it was like, you almost think there's okay, we're going to show you this one so you don't see that one.
Come on, man. Did you get tested for cocaine?
Oh. And the biggest tell is how he gets angry if he's asked, if you dare ask him anything, question him on anything. It feels just like Hillary, like Of course I should be coronated.
How dare you?
All right.
Crazy.
So, but sticking with
All right.
the
Reel it back
Elliot
in.
Abrams, okay?
Yeah.
So like a couple things. So what you were saying, Steve, about him pulling out troops from Germany and from Afghanistan. Obviously, we know the debacle with Afghanistan, how, you know, the Congress pretty much worked against him to be able to do that. But the thing with Germany was he pulled those troops out because remember, the whole thing is that NATO, all these countries, they haven't been paying their fair share. That is something that he actually did run on, you know. So this is seen as something that he is fulfilling, a campaign promise, right? Because, you know, supposedly the troops are supposed to be there to protect them from Russia. But remember, because of Nord Stream 2, which is the deal between Germany and Russia, the pipeline, well then, and remember that Trump was very much against that. And he was like totally trying to break the deal between them. And because it still went through, I feel like this was actually kind of a retaliation towards something like that, because you know how Trump is a tit for tat type of person. He's very transactional, you know. And then the other thing was that, so you were saying that he keeps hiring all these people to his cabinet, which, you know, he doesn't, again, this highlights what the danger of having someone who doesn't know anything about politics being in this position, and especially in the highest position of the land, right? Where you are going to have a cabinet that is going to dictate, pretty much everything for the whole world, essentially, because everything that happens, you know, in the U.S., you know, pretty much it trickles down to the rest of the world. But, you know, these people that they are known warmongers, war criminals, literally convicted war criminal in Elliot Abrams, you know, but that doesn't matter to him, you know, but because you always have that faction of his support that this is 3D chess, guys, you know. And then when something goes wrong, it's not his fault. He had no idea. It's Elliot Abrams. It's Elliot Abrams's fault, you know. So it's almost like he always has some sort of fall guy, right? Because ultimately, the military-industrial complex isn't going to let him do anything. So you know that whatever little things he does, that he does actually get to push through, it's what is acceptable to the military industrial complex and doesn't threaten them, right? I feel like we see that constantly with everything. But you saw how immediately once the whole, once he started talking about pulling troops out of Afghanistan, which he needs these things. These are like promises that he needs to fulfill in order to be able to be reelected. Because he understands that his ass is on the line. Like this election is a referendum against Trump, essentially. You know what I'm saying? And he knows that. And so, you know, he's gonna try whatever he can, but ultimately the military-industrial complex isn't gonna let him do anything.
Yeah, and he might, you know, for one set of bad reasons, always have like warmongers taking control of foreign policy, and Biden will knowingly put warmongers into play. Yeah, like I say, Susan Rice is horrific, and she'll be back in the, I'm sure, I bet the administration, if not VP, then, you know, Secretary of State or something.
That's my guess is Susan Rice, that he'll pick Susan Rice because
for VP.
Yeah, but we'll see what happens.
Which means a horrific warmonger as president in so many years. Though there's this other minor conspiracy thing going on, that the reason the Obamas are pushing Biden is because he's agreed to only be one term, and they really want Michelle to run. Michelle didn't want to deal with like going against Trump, but in 2024, she's like, you know, when it's beyond Trump, it would be a piece of cake basically for her. So that's a school of thought out there.
Interesting. But I think, you know, Trump, first of all, it's not decided. I mean, I think Trump has a fair chance of pulling this off and winning.
I think so.
And I think the appointment of Elliot Abrams may just be a signal to to the neocons that, okay, I can work with you, but then all bets are off if he gets reelected. Just as he will, doesn't have to have any pretense of being a Democratic or Democrat, lowercase d, after the election. He can also basically pursue his foreign policy as well, without having any fear of. Well, I mean, he might have fear of a reaction, but he doesn't worry about reelection at that point. So,
Right.
it'll be interesting to see. Interesting is a loaded word, but if he gets reelected, things may change.
Yeah, Trump unleashed without needing to
Right.
get reelected is a really bizarre, scary thought.
Yeah, which is kind of like, at least with Biden, you kind of know that,
You're
his
screwed.
tendencies, that he's a neoliberal, he's going to do a lot of the identity politics, he's going to, at least he's the devil, but with Trump, you don't know what's going to happen in this next, if he does, become reelected, and which, yes, would make him very dangerous. But also with the Biden side, it does make him very dangerous because technically it would be the VP that would be the president. So,
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I'm actually saying if
Absolutely.
Trump, I mean, foreign policy might be good under Trump, in terms compared to Biden. That's what I'm saying. I mean, as far as,
well, no, then they'll just kill him.
Yeah. Yeah.
They may not have to. I mean, the way he looks, it may not take much. It's
Hey, you know what? If you look at him compared to, and I think Joe Rogan actually talked about this, how if you look at all the other presidents at this time in their presidency, compared to when they first went into office, they look like shit. They like, you can tell the office really took a lot out of them. But Trump looks exactly the same way,
Especially when, whether you believe the investigations and impeachments and all that were valid or not. I guess I'm kind of like a mix on a lot of that, but Russiagate was bullshit. But, he's been under the microscope for his whole time. I mean, he's been probably meeting with lawyers, fighting off something every day for his entire term, right? And you would think that would kill me to be dealing with that,
But I think he's been sued forever.
Yeah, that's a good point. You're right. He's always done this. You're right. He's always done this. That's right.
He was just quoted the other day saying, like, whatever I do, people are going to sue me. So what do I care?
Exactly. Exactly.
I get sued for everything.
Right.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter whether it's whether it's dealing with a casino contract or national policy and unconstitutional presidential actions. It's the same thing for him.
And reality might be quite different for him than we would think. Like, we think in terms of everybody I know hates this guy, right? They might not think he's guilty of some of the Russiagate and some of that weird stuff, but they still don't like this guy. But he surrounds himself with people, I think, that are praising him all the time, probably, and he probably goes to rallies and this and that, and then speaks with small groups, and it's all people just like, praising him, I'm sure, I think his ego has no problem being boosted during his the course of his.
I mean, I think he does look okay for his age, and mentally, I mean, he's declined. If you look at him 30, 40 years ago, he's obviously declined a lot since then, but
not as much as Biden.
Not as much as Biden, right? Biden used to be really sharp as well, and now he can't string three words together.
People are specifically saying, if you look at Biden's announcement 18 months ago, he has gone down dramatically. It's like it's like onset of dementia happens like immediately after that, and it's been going at a fast pace.
What is that movie, No Country for Old Men or something? We've become a country for old men. It's just like old. He's old. You know how old LBJ was when he left office?
Oh no, I don't know.
60. He was 60.
Wow. Not going in at 78.
Really?
Right. I mean, LBJ looked old, right? But he was 60 when he left office.
But it's an old white guy that's going to give us the vision that we need to be able to move forward in the world, and make our dreams come true. Yay!
Again, it's just insane when you think of the group of people they had as candidates at the beginning of the primary, and that he's the one that came out.
I know it was the most diverse,
Yeah,
right? We
Right.
had like
yeah,
all sorts of people.
yeah.
We actually had a bunch of women
And
running.
It's
then,
all it's all a dog and
All
pony
different
show, and then the
well,
backgrounds.
end result is going to be exactly the
well,
same.
I mean, obviously, at some point, Sanders was a danger, and Obama made some calls and said, "No, it's Biden." I mean, that's obvious what happened, right? Is that just me?
Right, because it's
No,
just
I
a
mean,
bunch
actually,
of
well, it was.
he
I
basically
feel
told
like it
people,
was
"Get out of
reported
there."
out there, right?
It
That
basically was Buttigieg, get out of there. You get out.
yeah.
You get out. No, Warren, you stay in. I mean, to me, that's obvious.
All right, can I do my legislative week in review?
Yeah.
yes.
Okay. So for my legislative week in review, I wanted to talk about the HEALS and the HEROES Act and all this because I haven't really talked about that. And that's what's been in negotiations now for I don't even know how long, because the HEROES Act was introduced months ago, and obviously the Senate is still sitting on it. So this is from CNET, right? And so essentially this really breaks down the comparison, excuse me, of the three bills. It puts it really concisely, so that's why I wanted to go with this. But it says HEALS versus CARES versus HEROES, key differences between the Democratic and Republican stimulus package, right? And so, like I said, so they broke it down really nicely here. Okay, so we have the CARES Act, which was passed in March, right? So that was, but it has expired, or it's set to expire now in September.
Hmm.
And so the total cost of that stimulus package, 2.2 trillion. And then we have the HEROES Act, which is the one that was introduced by, this is the second stimulus that was introduced by the Democrats. And that's for 3 trillion. And then the HEALS Act, which is the Republican counter offer essentially to the HEROES Act, and that's 1 trillion, right? And can I just note here, like for anyone that has watched wrestling, you have the heroes and the heels, right? So a heel is supposed to be the bad guy, even though it's supposed to be HEEL. And then obviously the heroes, or in wrestling it would be babyface or a face, right? But I don't think that, like, with the way that everything is so reality TV, and it almost feels as though our politics is essentially like wrestling.
Yeah.
I thought that was like a little.
Well, and it's almost like the two parties got together and came up with this strategy
Right.
to name
Right.
their wrestling packages.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, and then you have that Linda McMahon, who is the wife of Vince McMahon.
Vince
Yeah.
McMahon.
She is, I think, the campaign manager. She's on the Trump campaign, so that's why I just think and she was, if I'm not mistaken, she was in charge of the Small Business Administration. So
Right.
Very.
I just think all these things, again, Orwell, it must be rolling around in his grave, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so then with the stimulus check, the maximum payment amount. So for the CARES Act, it would be $1,200 to single filers earning under $75,000 per year, $2,400 per joint filers for $125,000. Reduce $5 per $100 of income above limits, right? And so the the HEALS and the HEROES Act both have that same stipulation. So
again, that's one check, right?
yes, one-time check, not a recurrent check. None of them have actually addressed having these measures put in so that we can just address them. Like to have them continuing.
Right.
It's just a one-time deal, right? Because we have been going through this since March. But a one-time payment of $1,200,
March,
that's
April,
gonna
May, June,
save
July.
your ass.
5 months later, you've got $1,200, a couple hundred per month.
Right, and let's think about it, that if they were to pass this another stimulus check, when would we be getting this stimulus check, right? What, 6 or 7 months after this whole thing happened? So I mean, it's pretty ridiculous. So the dependents, obviously 500 for the HEALS. They want to have 1,200 for the HEROES Act. this is a big point of contention, the enhanced employment benefit. So the CARES Act, it's an extra $600 to the state benefits, or $600 per week, right? For the state benefits. The CARES Act, the HEROES Act, they would want to just extend that essentially. But the HEALS Act, well, initially it started that they really wanted it at 100, but I guess they went up to $200 per week extra. That's not just the $200 per week; it's just extra, right?
Yeah.
And then up to $500 per week to match 70% of lost wages when added to state benefits, which ultimately what it does is that them putting all of these caveats, it makes it more difficult. It's a lot more paperwork that these states have to deal with, which
Sure.
they're not, the programs that the states are using for a lot of these things are so ancient. They're so backlogged with a lot of things. And so now you want to add all of these like stipulations that now they're going to have to work around all these things, which again is just more calculations that needs to be done for these states instead of just a straightforward $600 or $200. You know what I'm saying? Just a straightforward amount.
And I have a
Right.
question too. I have a question about
Yeah,
this.
go ahead.
Now, what about self-employed people, independent contractors? They would not be covered under this enhanced unemployment, correct? Or they haven't been covered.
So technically, under the CARES Act, they were covered, right? And so if the HEROES Act were to pass, then it would be the same. But if the HEALS Act passes, then I'm sure it would not, because that's not something that they have really addressed, right?
Okay.
So then, how long would the unemployment last? So for the CARES Act, they wanted to expire July, or it did expire July 31st. For the HEROES Act, it would expire January 2021. And then so you see here through March 2021 for gig workers, independent contractors, part-time workers, and self-employed. So you see how the HEROES Act, they do address this, right? And then for the HEALS Act, it would be $200 per week bonus through September, which why even like if I'm not mistaken, the Senate introduced this in July, so they would just extend it to September. Which how is that helpful? This is what I don't understand. And then 70% matching of lost wages, extends expiration of federal benefits until December 31st. The PPP program, I mean, they're all pretty much for, what should be for small businesses, but we all know how that money worked out. And then the school reopening. So the liability protection from coronavirus illness, that was the
Right.
red line for Mitch McConnell, right? So that's why these negotiations have been going on for so long, because for the Democrats, it's that they weren't going to budge on the unemployment insurance, right? And then for the Republicans, it's that they weren't going to, or not the Republicans, that Mitch McConnell, that was his red line, that he was not going to budge on the liability. And that's actually why in the HEALS title, liability is one of them. Sorry? Oh, okay. So then the CARES and the HEROES Act does not address that, right? And then, and this is actually a really big point of contention for Nancy Pelosi. She didn't even want to include that at all. And then for the Republican bill, it would be a 5-year liability shield to prevent schools, businesses, hospitals from being sued over coronavirus-related issues. Which obviously it is really important that these companies, that they are able to open up again, right? That is really important. But the fact that, it's just about trying to get people to get back to work when you're sending mixed signals. You're telling people that, that the coronavirus is really bad and all this kind of stuff. But then at the same time, you want people to go back to work, And then if something does happen to them, they have no recourse for them, right? So it's always just the typical Republican way that always looking out for big business and fuck the little person, right?
Right.
It seems like both proposals are totally inadequate. I mean, it's
Oh,
like
for sure.
imagine like, the country is like your house and you have a fire going on in your bedroom, right? That's kind of where we are now, and it's threatening to spread to the whole
Yeah.
house. So the Republican proposal is like, here's a squirt gun, shoot this at the flames. The Democratic proposal is say, here's your garden hose. Okay, it's going to be better,
Yeah.
but
Right.
it's not going to put out the fire. And
Yeah.
it's like, it's so pathetic because it's threatening to become so much worse. I mean, just the evictions alone,
Right.
over the next few months, it's going to get much worse. The economy, not to mention the coronavirus itself, but the just the economy is going to get much worse. And thinking like this is enough. Like you need more than a New Deal level intervention. You need this like total, like, you need to start, hey, Jeff Bezos saying, we need $1 trillion from you or whatever, half $500
Yeah.
billion to you to pay for this stuff. I mean, they aren't going after him because that would be socialist or something. But I mean, these are totally inadequate measures. Both of them are totally inadequate.
And given we're still stuck with the insurance-based health coverage, like where's the bankruptcy protection for people
Right. Right.
that
Right.
are getting screwed from getting the virus, and they're also undone financially,
Right. And so then the other part of this is that you have Trump. He's the other part of the negotiation, right?
The
And you know
populace.
how we had been talking about how that if Trump really wanted to help people, he would just do things through executive order. And remember how I said, I don't think that you should be ruling through executive order. But if, his whole message was that he really just wants to help the people, then and they're not able to come to some sort of agreement, well then he's going to have to. So then this article comes from Bloomberg, and it says Trump says he'll order unemployment payments if impasse persists. So and this was 13 hours ago, and it says so President Donald Trump said that if he can't reach agreement with Democrats over stimulus legislation, he prepared to sign executive actions to provide expanded unemployment benefits and temporary payroll. Oh my God, why can't I read today? What's wrong with me? A temporary payroll tax deferral, eviction protection, and student loan relief. You guys can see this, right?
Yeah. And as I said, I saw him specifically talking about. I don't have the details about. It was like just like permanently forgiving, like interest on student loans or something.
So
Yeah.
Trump showing himself as a populist here, right? I mean, which is
Right.
how he
Yeah.
won, and he's realizing that if I'm going to win, I mean, if he wants to win, this is how
Right.
he's going to do it.
Right. So it says, so according to Trump, if Democrats continue to hold this critical relief hostage, I will act under my authority as president to get the American people the relief they need. And so he said this at a news conference at his golf club in Bedminster, New Jersey, because that's where he should be, is at a golf club, right?
You know what that
Because,
reminds me of? I'm sorry.
yeah.
It reminds me of George Bush and the
Yeah.
build up to the Iraq War, saying if the UN wants to go along and approve it, that would be great. But if they choose to be relevant, that would be great. But we're going to do whatever we want to do. I'm going to use my authority, and it's kind of the same thing. It's just like wagging, you're holding up your finger to the UN or to the Democratic Party or the government, to legitimately elected leaders, to say we're going to do whatever we want to do. If we don't really need you, we don't. Trump saying he really doesn't need Congress. And it would be nice if they do this on their own, but if they don't, I'm just going to do whatever I have to do.
Well, I think it's twofold, because I think on the one hand, what's really needed right now is an adult in the room saying, okay, we have X amount of people getting evicted. We have X amount of people who don't have a
Right.
job. We have X amount of people that are food insecure. We have people that are really scared, and they need us to come together, put our shit to the side, and actually come through with something.
They
So
can't do it. They can't do it. They're
I
not.
know,
They
but what I'm
haven't done
saying is that
policy for decades. They can't do it.
I know,
Can,
but what I'm saying is that from his standpoint, he did need to do something that
Right.
says, like, listen, you guys are acting like children. Him going and blaming the Democrats and all this kind of stuff, that's him being partisan and him doing all that stupid shit. But ultimately, there did need to be somebody who did say, like, listen, you guys keep fucking around with this. If you guys don't get your shit together, I'm gonna have to do something. You're forcing my hand.
So
That's how
Trump,
I'm reading
Trump
this.
is the adult in the room now.
That's how that's how I'm reading this.
well,
I'm not saying that he is, you know, that I'm not for Trump, and you know what I'm saying, and I don't, but I can recognize when he does things. I don't have Trump derangement syndrome. Not everything that Trump does
right.
is the most
Right, of
awful thing
course.
in the world,
Right.
nor is it bad. You know, like I'm not like I
Yeah.
said, I don't think that he should be doing things through executive order, but I do think that this was necessary because, like I said, you know, this has been going, these negotiations have been going on for weeks. Okay, this was supposed to have been passed. They were supposed to have come to some sort of agreement weeks ago, and they're still sitting on this.
Yeah.
And guess what? The Senate is about to go on vacation for 31
Right.
days.
Right.
So,
I,
and what about the people?
Yeah, I have to agree with Daisy on this. That I haven't liked when presidents in the past have done executive orders and all that. It's like that's going against the will of the people in a certain degree with their elected officials. But in this case, the people need help, and
Oh, I'm for it. I mean,
and I'm
I
afraid that.
support that.
Yeah, I'm afraid there might be. Yeah. I'm not arguing against them. I have to state my position too, and and I think there might also be politics involved, right? I think there is, to some extent, the Democrats want things to be bad. They want things to be a disaster under Trump, and I'm not sure that that's not affecting their decision making in this case.
There's no systemic, like, there's no plan for a response. Like, just saying
Right.
you're going to extend the ban on evictions, the moratorium on conviction, the moratorium on evictions.
Right.
Um, you know, that doesn't really solve the problem because ultimately, you know, these small landlords, they have to get their money. So, like, there has to be some kind of systemic reform, some kind of program to do that. And Trump just saying we're going to extend the moratorium on evictions, that's a good thing, but it doesn't go far enough. You need a plan, and none of them do policy. The president doesn't really do policy. Congress doesn't do policy because they've been stalemated for so long that there's no policy other than like tax cuts and, like, you know, lukewarm healthcare reform. That was it under Obama. I mean, nothing has really happened in the last, you know, few decades.
Right.
Right. Yeah. But
That's the problem.
I mean, there's no, yeah,
So when
exactly.
there's a real
Well,
need, when
in
there's a
that,
need for policy, they don't know what to do. They don't
well,
know what to do.
and Steve, to your point, after the first thing was done in March, why weren't we hearing, like, in April and June, them saying, well,
Exactly.
if COVID continues, then this is our follow-up plan, because we know we have to be prepared for, you know, of course, we don't
Because they
have
never have to actually do shit, you know. They just think
exactly.
like somehow it's going to get better, and then we'll just keep, you know, they're like caretaker government. They just kind of sit there and they serve their corporate masters, but they don't really do anything for people. You know, ultimately they can here's a few crumbs. So don't do a one-time, you know, check or whatever. Maybe we'll do it twice. But, like,
Well,
again, it's like trying to put out your house on fire with a garden hose. It's not going to work. It's just going to keep getting worse and worse and worse.
and so much of it is dealt with like it's you know, a high school presidential election, as far as, you know, the mean girls get together and decide who's in the club and whose bill they can support, whether or not it helps people or not, right? Whether or not it helps the people or not. Certain people you can't support there, and we know who, among many. I mean, they're all different cliques, right, that are all supporting this person or this person, depending on whether or not you're allowed to sit at our lunch table. You know,
It's like
horrible.
Napoleon Dynamite, right? Like that movie, you know, free
Yeah,
free soda for everybody. Vote for me or whatever.
exactly.
All right, so yeah, so essentially what they should have done with the first bill was that they should have just had all these measures until, you know, the pandemic is over. That is how they should have ended all of these
Like
measures. and then they can revisit it, right?
Yeah.
Every whatever 6 months or whatever it may be, they can revisit these things, and then they can see whether or not they need to continue on with such measures. But it's obvious
Sure.
that that all of these bills are very inadequate. But yeah, so it says the president blamed top Democrats, Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, because they're trying to influence the outcome of November's election. So, which I think it's, if you're not disgusted by the display of them just using politics when it comes to helping the people, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
Making it a political wedge and like a political tool that you're using, that to me is very disgusting and abhorrent,
That's nothing new,
Well-
though. That's nothing new. That's the way it's been for a long time.
We talked about like
Not saying it's
so-
new, I'm just
yeah.
saying.
like keep people frightened, like W using the what color threat level it is and all that. We discussed this before. This is
Right.
the same stuff going on, right?
Right. And so the two main points of contention, right, are on spending for aid to state governments and the supplementary unemployment benefits, which we already kind of went over the unemployment benefits, right?
Right.
But the other problem is the state governments, right? And mostly it's because the Republicans, they don't want to be seen as like bailing out these states that they may have other costs that they incurred, or because of their pensions, or because whatever
Right.
it may be, that they don't want to have to pay for all of this stuff. Meanwhile, in the HEALS Act, didn't they put in something for like the military? They put in more military spending. Because that has to do with the coronavirus, right? You need more tanks
Right.
to deal with the coronavirus.
Yeah, of course they slip things in all the time when they can.
Of course,
yeah.
of course. And so it says, to act on his own, the president is relying on an expansive and controversial reading of executive power that likely will face legal challenges. Trump told reporters that he's not concerned about getting sued, which is what you were saying earlier, right, Steve?
Right.
And so it says, two people familiar with the matter said Trump would extend the supplemental unemployment insurance at a $400 per week level. So that's between, right? So he's the middleman, right? A reduction from the $600 in the last stimulus bill. It wasn't clear what mechanism he would use to fund the extension or how long it would be in place. So he also said that his payroll tax, so the payroll tax has been the thing for Trump. That's what, so you know how each one of them had their own thing. So Pelosi, it was the unemployment insurance. For McConnell, it was the liability insurance, and then for Trump, it's the payroll taxes, right? Which the payroll taxes, it's and I'm gonna read on here. It's fine, that would help people, but what about the people that don't have a job?
Right.
That they are not on the payroll.
Right.
What
exactly.
happens to them? Like, how do you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
That's why everything is so half-assed.
It should have been it should have been a straight UBI until the emergency was over. They should have past that immediately, and then look at all these other things to help people with rent and student loans and all that. And people need help with healthcare because they're going broke.
How
they're
about
going
free
bankrupt
healthcare
on this stuff?
Like,
yeah, exactly.
Free healthcare for 6 months or something, because like they talked about free, COVID testing and everything like that, or free treatment for COVID. Like, how are you supposed to, if you don't have a job, you don't have health insurance, how is this extra supplement going to help you buy health insurance?
I know it.
With deductibles and everything. I mean, it's like you still, I just got filled a prescription. I have good health insurance. I had to pay $150 for a prescription with the health insurance, right? Or if I go to emergency room, it's like $500. So if you're getting an extra $200 a week, I'm sorry, that's not gonna.
Exactly.
Exactly. Yeah. It's crazy.
Exactly. So then Trump said that his payroll tax order would eliminate the levy until the end of the year, and it would be retroactive to July 1st. Trump told reporters the orders could be completed by the end of the week. They're being drawn by the lawyers right now. So I don't know if that's just him trying to be a tough guy, being like, oh yeah, my lawyers are already drafting it up. Like, you better get your shit together, I feel like that's kind of more what it is. I feel like he's calling their bluff. This is what I think is more so the case, but it's
Yeah.
because he desperately needs it.
Yeah, I
So
agree.
says,
Yeah, I don't have Trump derangement syndrome, and in this narrow situation, I like him kicking their ass a little bit, trying
yeah,
to get him to do something.
yeah. And you know, the art of the deal, right? He wrote a book.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
he didn't write
supposedly
it.
it's a really great book.
It was ghostwritten. And the guy who
Oh,
ghost
okay.
wrote it said disavows everything he wrote about it.
Oh,
He said it was
really?
all lies. Yeah.
But the art of the deal is one of those books that
Oh yeah.
huge business people, they always talk about it. So
Not in my world. I don't know. I'm a business person. It's like I know it's a very popular book, but he did not write it himself. I mean,
yeah, okay,
he would have a hard time writing anything.
yeah. All right, so then Pelosi, you know what that reminds me of? Like, you know when they show the memes of him holding up the executive orders, and it'll say like something like written by like a child. It looks like it's written by a
Right.
child.
I think the same thing with George. Remember with George W. I mean, who had like he was showing his book, and they had crayons pictures of.
Yeah.
It's the same thing.
Yeah.
I see a lot of similarities between George W. and Trump. In terms of
Yes.
like,
Oh, I do in terms of W was Hitler Satan, right? A decade ago, 2 decades ago, whatever like that, and now he's palling around with Clinton and Obama. They're great friends. The families are all great friends now.
and
Now, whether or
remember,
not,
sorry,
what's that?
remember with George W. when he was, with the whole thing with Abu Ghraib and the torture and everything. He said, "Well, I'm having my lawyers look at it now, and my lawyers told me it was okay." So it reminds me of when Trump says, "My lawyers are looking at it now." It's
Oh
kind of like,
yeah,
well, my lawyers say it's okay. The Supreme Court or whatever, Congress doesn't matter, the
yeah.
Constitution, because my lawyers said it was okay.
Right. And I have no conscience or heart, so
Well,
so that's irrelevant. Yeah.
yeah.
All right, so it says Pelosi and Schumer said they again offered to cut $1 trillion from the Democrats' $3.5 trillion proposal if Republicans would raise the top line number of their plan by $1 trillion. So essentially, they want to meet in between. They want to meet at $2 trillion, because that's like the biggest thing. Like, you really think that if they go to 2 trillion, that's it? That's going to be the one thing that got them to come together. So after the talks ended Friday, Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin said he would recommend to the president that he sign the executive orders. So especially because he said that state aid has been a particular sticking point with Trump. And it also says Pelosi said Friday Democrats still demand $915 billion. This is for the state aid. While Republicans are only offering $150 billion. That's a massive discrepancy. But Mnuchin said remains to some aid related to COVID-19 and to help. Said remains to some. Does that make sense? Mnuchin said remains to some aid.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
seems to be a bungled sentence. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought it was
Yeah.
just me. I was like, wait a minute. I know I'm having a little bit of trouble reading today, but
I think he remains open to some aid, maybe.
Oh, he remains. That's right.
No, I think if I'm not mistaken, it's that there is some aid that's still in the bill. That's the point of contention for the Republicans, is that there's still some aid from the previous bill. So
Okay.
why are we going to go and add more or give more aid if there's still aid from the other bill that wasn't spent? That's essentially, if I'm not mistaken, that's what that was about.
Yeah, generally the Republicans would be against aid to the Democratic states, right? Because they would say it's all going to go for pensions and all that, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And essentially, with McConnell, even though he's had these, these red lines, he said essentially he has had to, pull back on a lot of it because he knows that the Republicans, there's a mass group of Republicans that they are not going to vote for this. Regardless, they are not going to vote for this bill. So I don't really know what this means for the people. So
maybe Trump's executive order is what you get. And if you get like you're saying, the biggest thing is that, okay, you increase, you have some extra unemployment benefits, but then what about all the other folks, right? Yeah, that's the real problem there.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's looking like he has no other option but to sign the executive order.
Right.
Especially with how many days? We're less than 90 days from the election. He can't let this go. Like, he can't let the Senate go 31 days on vacation.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
like another month. He can't let another month go by, and then maybe they'll do negotiations again. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not
Now,
even for sure that they would actually have a bill.
so there is nothing, if he signs an executive order, there is no, like, they can't override it with 2/3 vote or anything like that, can they? An executive order?
Well, I think that then it goes to the courts. It can
And
be
it can be challenged in courts, right?
right.
Yeah.
So
So
I
then
think
Democrats would be in the awkward position of saying, yeah, we're all going on vacation. There is this thing that would help you, but we're not gonna, we're gonna block it. Right.
exactly.
Yeah. So unfortunately, it
It's
all
a
becomes
saving
political.
grace for him. Honestly, him doing the executive orders would just be a saving grace for him.
Oh,
That
yeah.
would, I feel like, and obviously this is just my opinion. If he were to actually do something like this, where he gives people a one-time, and especially if he gets challenged by the courts for it, then it makes him look like the martyr.
Right.
You know, at the end of the day, he's gonna look like the martyr for this.
He's
Well,
he's in his element on this because he knows it's
Mhm.
going to make him look good.
Yeah.
and he actually is that. This
Yeah.
is actually
Right.
what
Oh,
you
yeah.
want to you want a benevolent populist president that will
Right.
do things like this. We don't want Trump, but he's acting like the populist president that we would want.
So now, where's Biden and all this? Has he said anything about this, or is it just Schumer and Pelosi?
He's in the basement still. They got it blocked up still.
He's eating.
Yeah, but
He got a new case of
he has
tapioca
dial-up,
pudding.
right? I mean, he could.
Yeah.
Well,
He
it's
has
just
a
because
record player
he's over by
AOL.
the pool with his hair.
He still once every other day, you know, you can tell when he does interview, there are interns in front of, there are people, handlers in front of him, waving him off when he goes down a bad road. That happened with the thing with calling the reporter a junkie, where all of a sudden they obviously waved him off and he went down a better road. Then he went down a bad road again. It's unbelievable.
They got to do a 10-second delay on those things, you know. Come on.
Yeah.
Well, that's why he doesn't want. They're telling him not to do the debates, right? So
because of COVID.
Which Jim, you said that they weren't, most likely they weren't going to.
Right.
Well, he's not physically going to the convention. I don't know if anybody is, right? And then also, I'm sure whatever he does from home can be on a tape delay. He can basically record it, and he can, you know, do something. He can record. He's probably recording a speech now. They'll probably do it over the course of several weeks and get something together, you know.
Every
Kind of like
time,
the Kamala Harris thing.
Every time Joe Biden says, "Come on, man."
Oh,
come on, man.
To me, it's how he visibly gets angry, and that can be a dementia thing.
It can be.
That can be a dementia thing, and it's just like an entitlement thing. It looks so bad. And yeah, I still don't know. He's been saying he's going to do the debates. I don't know. I still am not sure it's going to be him as the nominee. I still think he's so bad now. He's going downhill so fast.
But he's ideal.
If we have super delegates, that's the reason you have.
They want to get somebody in there who's just a dummy, you know. I mean, literally like a puppet, you know, like George W. and Reagan to some extent was too. I mean, especially the second half of his administration. But I mean, you know, I mean, obviously Biden is just going to be, he's going to be like, you know, eating his oatmeal or something, and they'll be like implementing the policy, right? He might be able to sign his name on the laws, but he's not going to be out there.
Well, so the question is who the they are, right? Is it like Obama level Dems, or is it just like deep state military industrial complex? Or is it the whole? I mean, how do they arrange that?
I mean, it's both, but it's deep state. Yeah, whoever pays the Dems to do what they're doing. Corporations and the revolving door between corporations and the permanent military intelligence state. Yeah, they're ultimately the decision makers, right? So they're pushing Abrams, they're pushing these people, and you know, like Susan Rice are going to have a bunch of neocons in a Biden administration, just as you know.
Yeah, I'm
If you
just
wouldn't.
wondering how that, when it's so, I mean, we haven't really had this kind of situation before where a president going in is unable to fulfill the office. Um, have they already got the structure in place that allows them to say who the real decision maker is? Or is that what's currently going on right now? Is it trying to figure that out?
Yeah.
Well, that's if we even have an election, guys.
That's if we even have an election. Yeah. Well,
That's a big stipulation that previously, so if like 2019 Daisy would have told 2020
yeah.
Daisy that we were going to end up maybe not even having an election, I would have thought that was crazy. But
I mean, the latest thing Trump has said, he's backed off on the idea that he would delay. He says, "Oh no, I want to go on. I want to get on with it. I want to have the election."
well, yeah, because he can't. Him coming out and saying, like, remember, even that tweet that he sent out about delaying the elections, when I think it was either that same day or maybe the next day in Hong Kong, they delayed the elections for that,
Uh,
right? For that same reason, because of everything that's going on with coronavirus. So, like him, that's what I was saying earlier, that it is supposedly logical for him to have this train of thought. And if I'm not mistaken, that same day, that morning that he sent that tweet out, it was the morning that Herman Cain had passed away, right? And Herman Cain, it was he was being used as this propaganda tool, because you could not see a headline that didn't say Herman Cain dies from COVID-19 or coronavirus. And then somewhere in there, somewhere in the article, they have to put that he went to the Trump rally,
right.
like 6 weeks ago or whatever. And he kept talking about how we shouldn't be wearing masks. So this poor man, and I'm not talking about his politics or anything like that, but I'm just saying, like, this man's death has just been totally used for propaganda.
Right. Well, John Lewis a little bit too.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah,
For
yeah,
sure.
yeah. Making passion political speeches during a, um, a a a funeral service when a lot of people have rightly said, I couldn't have a funeral service for my loved one. I wasn't allowed to because of COVID.
Yeah.
Kind of
Um,
horrific.
Now this, I don't know if I'm going on a tangent here, but this reminds me of, I saw this Graham Elwood thing on intergenerational wealth. Did anyone see that? But talking about intergenerational wealth in this country and how basically it's very disproportionate, between um, basically, privileged people and people of color in this country, as far as, and I think there was an example of in Boston, the average, family wealth of, uh, white people is like whatever is $250,000. For black people, it's like $8, right? So like there's this whole discrepancy in wealth. So that affects whenever you have these programs that people get this assistance. Like if you have an extended family and like you lose your job and you can't pay your rent. I mean, ultimately you move in with your parents, you move in with your brother or whatever. But if you don't have that kind of wealth in your family, it may be much more difficult to do that. And I think that's not being really being addressed at
Sure.
all, because this is like the evictions are obviously going to affect people who can't move in with a relative or whatever, more than it's going to affect people who are able to do that. So I think it's
Absolutely.
going to disproportionately affect people of color and people um, in when you see people out on the streets. And I wonder, um, it's not really being addressed. I think Graham Elwood's the only one I've seen who's really dealt with that at all. And he talks about the legacy of he has this what is it, ADOC, Descendants of Slavery. I forget.
ADOS,
ADOS. What is it? What's the A stand for?
American Descendants of Slaves.
Okay, so he talks about that whole basically, and which didn't end in 1865. It went through Jim Crow and Reconstruction and Jim Crow, and there's this. So there hasn't been the ability of that class to amass wealth to any extent,
Hmm.
and you look at all the policies of Republicans trying to um, you know abolish like the so-called death tax, the inheritance tax, because the idea is you can't pass, that would mean it would be harder to pass wealth from generation to generation. So it's
Right.
keeping the wealth, and obviously taxation has a lot to do with that. Income as well as wealth taxes, of which we don't have, in this country really, except we have property taxes at state level. But the fact that you have wealth concentrated, I mean, I don't think that's really being discussed at this point, but it seems to me that's really relevant because when push comes to shove, the people who are going to be most affected are going to be the people who are disproportionately people of color, right?
Yeah, I would agree with that. In bad times, there'd be less safety net available there. Completely relevant what you're saying. The ability to move in with parents who happen to have an extra bedroom and some cash in the bank to buy extra groceries and all that. We could still have a really horrific situation coming down the road here, if all these if there isn't some kind of UBI, some kind of payments to help folks out.
And and one thing that doesn't get talked about is that what about those people? And, as a person of color, as a Hispanic person, I grew up in a family where my grandma lived with us. Like, you have several generations that live in one household.
Mhm.
What about those people?
Right.
Where they were living together, you know what I'm saying, and they had to a lot of the times the reason why we all live together, one, because we like to take care of our older generation, but also it's because of financial reasons, that you're not able to just spread out. Not every single person can go and have an apartment or have a house, and you know what I'm saying, and so you pool your funds together in order to be able to maintain whatever housing it is that you have. So what about those people? And especially in like California, where you have a lot of immigrant families that are there who and they have no recourse because they can't go to anybody because they're afraid that they're going to get deported, or that one of their family members is going to get deported, or they're just going to get put into one of these ICE detention centers, or like that's not something that's really talked about with this whole pandemic crisis. That everybody talks about, obviously, yes, people of color, but what about immigrants in this situation? A lot of them, they have their jobs are it's a daily type of funding. The same situation happens in India. Like when India locked down, it was a big deal because a lot of these people, they make their money in the day, and if they're not able to go and travel for work or whatever it may be, then they have no money to buy food for that day. And for a lot of these immigrants, it's the same deal.
And I think COVID hits them harder too, right? Because it's a whole different in the white suburbs where people might have 1,000 square feet per person, versus a situation like you're talking about, where you've got multi-generational for financial reasons, and also just more expensive in the city, perhaps, right? You're talking like 100 square feet per person. People live in close proximity. As we say, multi-generational. That's a much bigger concern about catching COVID,
right?
And going through.
I mean, do you see these people in the suburbs, maybe, who like think of themselves as progressive, with a 3,000-foot house? Are they going to be willing to take in some people who are homeless because of this? That's a real test. Like,
I
doubt it too.
Yeah.
Well, we're gonna have like what is it, Karen and Kevin with their guns standing on the lawn.
Was it Kevin? That was his name.
Yeah.
Well, no, it's that it's the whole Karen and Kevin thing.
Right.
It's not that their names are actually or maybe they are that Karen and Kevin, but that was just the nickname that was given to them.
And they said that they supported Black Lives Matter. Those people. They said they supported the movement. They just didn't want these people going in there.
Yeah. Well, that's how it always works, right? And that's one of the main arguments that you get from the anti-socialists, right, or the capitalists, is they always say like, oh, well, you have this bleeding heart, right, that you want to help all these homeless people. So then why don't you take in homeless people in your house,
right?
Or why don't you just leave your door open? Like with the whole open borders thing, how a lot of people have that big contention. It's like, well, then why don't you just bring in all these people into your house?
It's not in my backyard. It's like see no evil. Like, I don't care how these clothes. I buy the clothes at the Gap and they're really cheap. I don't. I don't, you know, they were made by slaves in Pakistan, by children or whatever. You know, I think, oh, because they have a sign up saying, you know, we enforce, you know, whatever, something, you know, so oh, I feel good about it now. It's okay. So I can
I'm a
still take,
social justice warrior, so
I'm a
I'm
social
good.
justice warrior,
Yeah.
right? But like when it comes down to it, like when these people start invading your, well, invade's the wrong word, but when they start showing up in your neighborhood saying, "Can I stay at your house?" You know, are you going to do that? And during the Depression, I mean, I remember that my father's generation talking about this during the Depression. There were like, you know, hobos, right? So there were homeless people who just wandered around. They lived in rail cars, and if they showed up at your back door, they said, could you feed us?" And the rule was basically you gave them a hot meal. That's what you did. You
Wow.
didn't turn
Oh,
them around. And that was kind of the ethos of that time, because you figure everyone's in hard times,
right.
and they wouldn't stay there, you know, but you would give them a hot meal, feed them, and maybe let them take a shower or whatever, and then they'd be on their way. But
Huh.
like I
See,
can
that's
kind of see that.
community. That's
I,
community
I
right
can
there.
see that. Well, that actually the Depression did a lot to engender this feelings of community in this country, which, you know, the capitalist ethic is totally against. You know, it's all personal freedom, individual rights, you know, my gun, whatever, my money, my property. I think this will start chipping away at that edifice of, you know, um, that ideology, you know. So we started becoming a little bit more collective minded than just, you know, individualist. So that might be a good thing,
Yeah.
the end result.
All right. So
Anyways,
thanks for watching, everybody.
all right,
Thanks, guys.
bye
Bye
bye.
bye.
Have a good week. Peace.